Hello everybody! I'm going to share with you an overhead of this brand new book haul that I came across of used finds of some classic children's literature. This is a used find, Pinocchio, and not the Disney movie or version. Pinocchio was published in 1883 by an Italian author, Carlo Collodi, and it's about a mischievous boy that becomes alive from being a marionette doll. So anyone who obviously the Disney's Pinocchio does kind of go completely changes the story. I actually already read this just yesterday, and it's really incredibly dark and very surprising, and not exactly at all how Disney portrays it. So that will be interesting to do a video of for anybody who wants to learn more about the original Pinocchio. And this is a Puffin classic, and I do have a whole series of these Puffin classics. You can see here what they look like. This is just some of them. They're really hard to find now. You can find them on Amazon if you really search, mostly on eBay, because I don't think they're releasing them anymore. So next I came across this giant, beautiful illustrated Gullivers Travels from the Masterpiece by Jonathan Swift for $10. I couldn't believe it. And I got this at a bargain book site. And Gullivers Travels is an incredibly old book. Obviously, this is a classics video written by Jonathan Swift in 1726. In colonial times. That's how old this book is. This is obviously not an original, cover of what it originally looked like, but it's considered prose satire, and Jonathan Swift was a clergyman and an Irish writer. And so this is sort of, let me show you the inside a little bit. And it does appear to be have some really surrealism in the art. You see shapes that are unnatural sizes. There's a lot of text in here, but I thought if you're going to have a child read a classic, the writing of classics is more difficult and dry sometimes, and so if you can give them an illustrated version, they're more likely probably to want to read it. And the illustrations here are by Francesca Rossi, so I'm kind of excited to really look through this book as well. And here I have this book called The Wonderling by Mira Bartok, and this is actually a little bit newer in this pile, so it's not necessarily a classic, but this is an incredibly adorable book. I read this when it first came out. Somehow I loaned out my copy and I never got it back, so word to the wise. So I bought this copy, bargain price, but it's Welcome to the Home for Wayward and Misbegotten Creatures, run by the evil Miss Carbuncle, a cunning villainess with a cold, impenetrable heart who believes her terrified young charges exist only to serve and suffer. Part human, part animal, the poor young groundlings in the orphanage toil in classroom and factory, forbidden to do anything that regular children do. Okay, so for the Wonderling, an innocent, one-eared fox, like an 11-year-old with no proper name. He only has a number as his identity. It really is a really cute book, very emotional actually. It's a pretty fat book as well. There's a lot of kind of Charles Dickens-ish in here, like Oliver Twist, kind of like the workhouse for animals that are, quote, orphans or displaced animals that are abused. And a lot of this book is about an escape plan and the adventures that this fox goes on. And one of her books won the National Book Critics Circle Award as well. So this is a really cute book. I really highly recommend it. It would make a really nice Christmas gift as well. And let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, I did pick up this classic 1986 version of The Neverending Story by Michael Ende. And The Neverending Story is considered fantasy fiction, of course, and it was one of those books that was made into a movie that probably in the 80s or 90s you might have seen. Unicorns, dragons, spirits, will-o'-wisp, the inhabitants of an enchanted world. And into this world, through the pages of an old book, ventures Bastian, a lonely boy of 10 or 12, but Fantastica, slowly decaying, its childlike empress dying. Only a real human being can set things right by giving the empress a new name. Bastian takes up the challenge and finds himself crossing the swamps of sadness and the silver mountains, meeting sorcerers and giants, bats and nighthawks, gnomes and racing snails, as he journeys bravely toward the ivory tower. Bastian's quest is filled with all the wonders of myth and fairy tale. It is a fantasy adventure that will capture your heart and recapture the dreams of childhood. And this is considered young adult, and so it's definitely not a younger children's book. There are a lot of hard words in here. It comes across almost adult-like to me. So a lot of the names of the fantasy characters are almost impossible to pronounce, as I recall. Okay, well, here's a gorgeous book from Puffin Threads, The Wind in the Willows. And it's kind of textured. It feels like it's textured. It feels like it's embroidered. And The Wind in the Willows was written in 1908. It's kind of a slow-moving tale that focuses on anthropomorphized animals, which basically means animals that have human-like characteristics and come alive and talk to each other and whatnot, like they're people. About a mole, a rat, a toad, and a badger living in Edwardian England. And everyone's heard of Wind in the Willows, of course, but I love these Puffin Threads books. They're really nice copies. I think they stopped making these as well. They had a few. You can see here in the back, if you can find them online. But it's a really nice collection. It isn't the most exciting book. I've read this before. But it has a lot of allegory. There's a lot of symbolism in the book, a lot of actions and words and things in the book that someone who really knows literature, classic literature, can relate to what is being hinted at, but a child may not know. But it's definitely a classic worth reading if you never have read it. And I picked up these, which are more like young adult, teen to adult, but I was so excited I couldn't help it. These are Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, the Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition, and Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, sisters, of course. And everybody knows I love Gothic literature, Gothic children's literature, which stems from the first Gothic novel was known as The Castle of Otranto, but the early Bronte sisters books were classic works of Gothic fiction, and that sort of spun off toward as kind of examples that not long after, late 1700s, early 1800s, children's Gothic fiction came from. And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of children's Gothic fiction that had supernatural elements, mild horror elements, terror. And I am in the process of finishing up an adult class on horror, Gothic, supernatural, and paranormal literature for children, which will be for sale, and an online class for adults who would like to study that. And it will include reading 8 different books with the class, including learning about other books and what consists, elements that you can use to teach the books in a classroom setting, a homeschool setting, and so much more. So keep tuned for that. But anyway, these books are incredible. I'll show you the back. I think the art, I love the art on them. And obviously that these are, probably more for teens and adult reading. But I just wanted to share these with you because they're so precious. I love these books. And these actually got used as well. So if they're still releasing these Puffin Classics Deluxe Editions, they're probably quite expensive. Then I picked up this because it's the cutest thing in the entire universe. This is a New York Times best-selling Everything I Need to Know I Learned from a Little Golden Book. And so it's kind of like a little glossary of little golden books, and they take little lessons from all the different famous little golden books and put it into its own story here. It's super cute. So, and it'll tell you the original book it came in. So, Learning How to Daydream from I Can Fly. Bird Watching from I Am a Bunny. The Simplest Things Are Often the Most Fun from The Saggy Baggy Elephant. I just thought it was neat. It's kind of like the best of all the little golden books, and all the lessons you need in life came from little golden books. How to use your imagination, look up, savor the seasons as they roll around you. This would be a nice gift for a small child, or a, you know, under second grade child for Christmas. Choose your companions wisely from the Gingerbread Man. So it's kind of like a historical timeline of the best lessons from all the little golden books, and it's a little bit chunky, so it's a bigger book. Let's see what else we have. I picked up The Book Thief, used copy. I was always confused why, and this was an honor book, a Michael Prince honor book. Extraordinarily, yeah, I got some raving reviews. I always thought that this was an adult book. I didn't realize it was considered young adult, like ages 12 and up, because it's such a fat book for one. And number two, it reads to me, I always thought, like adult writing from the few glimpses I've had. It's from 2006, one of the most talked about books. It takes place 1939, Nazi Germany. The country's holding its breath. Death has never been busier. By her brother's graveside, Liesl Miminger's life is changed when she picks up a single object, partially hidden in the snow. It's the grave digger's handbook, left there by accident, and it's her first act of book thievery. So begins a love affair with books and words as Liesl, with the help of her accordion-playing foster father, learns to read. Soon she's stealing books from the Nazi book burnings, the Meyer's wife's library, wherever these books are to be found. So it's, again, there's a lot of good possibility for historical lessons in here. But when I got to looking at it, I'm like, yeah, there's illustrations. I guess it would be for young adults, but it's such a big book. There's some illustrations, but I mean, this feels to me like an adult novel. So, I mean, what is it? Almost 500 pages. I wish they had they just made it just a little bit smaller. So I actually have only read a couple of passages here and there. I've never read the book. So eventually I will read this and do a review of it as well. So I also picked up, so by Susan Coolidge, I picked up, and it was really hard to find. Well, first let me show you this one, which I already had, like my Pinocchio and Other Puffin Classics, which is What Katie Did by Susan Coolidge. And there were several books in the series. This was this was obviously the Puffin edition, but I think this was written in 18... Boy, that's some small writing. Even with my I can't remember. Oh yeah, first published 1872. This is my version I already had, and I love this book. It has a little bit of Little Women and Anne of Green Gables feel to it. It's beautiful writing. It's about an older sister who's responsible for several of her siblings. Their mother has died, and it's about her grief for her mother and some changes to the family. But there was 2 or 3 more books, which was What Katie Did at School and What Katie Did Next. And they don't make the books. Also, like in this version, they don't have the remaining books. So I'm like, what? Well, I feel totally gypped. I could not find that at all. So this is all I could find. I even on Amazon, like I had to get this on eBay because I wanted to read the other books. So these are all classic literature, but I would highly recommend starting with What Katie Did because it's beautiful. And then I have not read these follow-up books yet, but I will, and then I will speak of those as well. I picked up a copy of Pax, and this is going to go in my animals, children's literature, and animals course once that gets designed. We have the layout and the kind of the blueprint for that class. We have about over 15 books that'll be covered in that class. But Pax has been really well known, talked about a lot in schools and in some literary reviews. Pax and Peter have been inseparable ever since Peter rescued him as a kit. But one day the unimaginable happens. Peter's dad enlists in the military and makes him return to the fox to the wild. At his grandfather's house, 300 miles away from home, Peter knows he isn't where he should be with Pax. He strikes out on his own, despite the enroaching war, spurred by love, loyalty, and grief to be reunited with his fox. And so this is really about kind of like a lassie, or a sounder, like a boy and his beloved animal, and tragedy. So I always cry my eyes out with these books. But animal books, especially, not necessarily the anthropomorphism books where the animals are alive and talking, but books, sometimes you have books that come from animals' perspectives, or you have just books that are from the child's perspective with their pets, kind of like in the Shiloh books. But They're always something so special, and these books about animals and humans always have a lot of lessons to teach, which is why I like, you know, especially when it comes to literature and novels, and I think it teaches compassion about animals and how to respect other creatures, and instead of necessarily the ones where the animals are alive and talking, I like animal books that have more realism to them. So I'll be talking about Pax quite soon. And lastly, I picked up an amazing vintage book, which is Granny's Wonderful Chair by Frances Brown. And this was written in 1856, and it's been noted by scholars, literary scholars, as being culturally important to civilizations as we know it and the development of fantasy literature. So this illustrated version was obviously not an original, so because it was done in 1999. But you can go on eBay and look under antique and vintage literature, and you can look at some, you know, first printing, second, third printing, the late 1800s of this book. And so it's a traditional fairy tale. In an old time long ago, when the fairies were in the world, there lived a little girl so uncommonly fair and pleasant of look that they called her Snowflower. The girl was good as well as pretty. No one had ever seen her frown or heard her say a cross word, and young and old were glad when they saw her coming. So I'm thrilled to read this. I love classics. I love vintage literature because I think the writing of vintage and antique and classic children's literature is just 1,000 times more gorgeous and intellectual and even meaningful and than books that are produced for children today. I mean, our culture has changed. The reading abilities of children have changed. You know, in the 1700s, 1800s, there were no video games and TVs and you know, toys and electronics and tablets and phones and things to, you know, streaming channels, Netflix, to have kids have shorter attention spans. And children, for entertainment, read. That's what they did. They read, they worked hard, they did chores, they read, and that's about it, right? Maybe they had some little tinker type, you know, tic-tac toys or something, but reading was, so a child in the days that these books were published, this would have been easy reading for them. But give a modern child of a similar age a book like a classic book such as this. I mean, even Charles Dickens, David Copperfield, Oliver Twist were meant to be children's books, and these are huge novels. I mean, when I was doing my degree in English literature, my undergrad degree, it was like, I had a whole class on Dickens, and I had to read the Pickwick Papers. It was like 1,000 pages, you know, I mean, and all these Dickens novels, and it was just like, there's no way that this could have been children's literature, but apparently it was, especially many of his books. So anyway, I just find I love the classics the most because it feels more like adult literature, but the wording is just so beautiful and mesmerizing, and the way, you know, you can feel and sense and detect, you know, English, Old English or British or American old customs, how people actually spoke in those days comes out in the writing, very, you know, classic and elegant and eloquent. So that's just why I love classic literature. So if there are any particularly books of these you'd like to see me talk about, do a review of, or talk about how you can use this in some kind of a learning environment, please drop a comments below and let me know, so I will get to those videos first.